Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to one more episode of my North African adventure with Bob, somewhere in Tunisia. Picking things up from when we left them in the last episode, I had basically survived one full day in a full-blown sandstorm out in the Sahara Desert, and today I was basically battling my way through a crazy windstorm. When I say crazy, I mean crazy. It was the first time in my entire life, in the almost 20 years that I've owned Bob, that the wind was actually pushing the car right to left, and it was not safe to drive anymore. So I had to find shelter. From where I was, the closest available, and from what it turned out, the one and only Airbnb in the area was in a small little village called Skhira that I had never heard of, and I'm pretty sure nobody ever has because there's absolutely nothing to see and nothing to do. It's just a village stuck on the middle of the road on my way to monastery. As luck would have it, I found myself once more wandering around in an unknown suburb in a village in the middle of nowhere with limited GPS signal, again, trying to find out where the one and only Airbnb that I was going to spend the night in actually was. And after a few trial and error attempts and plenty of frustration, I finally made it to the spot that was going to be my refuge for that windy day and quite eventful night. Storms are there to make us appreciate the good days. The sunny ones, the bright ones, where the wind is gone, the sun is up, and a brand new day lays ahead of us to explore, have fun, and enjoy. That morning I was particularly happy and pleased because electricity had come back and the water was restored because, of course, the wind was so strong that it knocked out some power lines the night before and there was no electricity anywhere within the vicinity of the area, and because of that, no pumps could work, and that meant no running water. So, with amenities restored, all showered up, fed up, and coffeed up, it was time for me to run my usual morning inspection of Bob. This had basically developed into a daily morning ritual whereby I would check my radiator coolant, my windshield wiper fluid, and of course, the oil level in the car. Despite all the fine-tuning and adjustments that I've been doing throughout the trip in checking and testing Bob, I wasn't really faced with any serious problem with the car, and I had already reached the point, 5,000 kilometers down the road, that I would completely trust Bob pretty much anywhere I wanted to go. There was only one small detail that I had to sort out once I would be back in Greece, and that was my oil level. This little detail that was actually quite important had plagued me since day one, since I actually left Greece, and that was a pretty hefty oil leak on the left side of my engine, and that meant one thing and one thing only. I had a main crankshaft oil seal leak, and it was, one could argue, was serious. I would argue that it was serious but stable, and so long as I kept oil in that engine, there would be no further issues with it. The question was, why was there such a persistent leak since I had already seen that before I left for the trip and I had replaced that oil seal thinking I would fix the problem. So I didn't fix the problem, there was something causing my seal to leak oil twice. Was I gonna bother with it? No, I was not. I had a full day of driving ahead of me and that's all that mattered. I simply accepted the fact that I was going to be leaking oil throughout for the rest of my journey till I made it back home to Greece and figured out what the root cause of that leak was. And that would actually make one entire episode, as it turned out, in the months that followed. Besides, how much fun would it actually be if one was on a road trip in a classic Mini and nothing went wrong? It wouldn't be interesting. Little failures as such are there to make our lives and our trips just a wee bit more interesting and spice things up. But for now, things were great and I was ready to get a move on to my next destination, the little town of El Jam. Having survived one day in a sandstorm, another consecutive day in a windstorm, Skhira itself, the electricity cut, the water outage, and what have you during that quite eventful night, I had finally made my way all the way to the town of El Jem. Now, El Jem is a city not far from Monastery, which was my final destination, since I had one more full week of work ahead of me at the shipyard. It's a town that's a destination in itself. Why? Because in it, there's the third largest, best preserved Colosseum in the world. The only catch to the Colosseum story was actually finding it, because as I was driving down the narrow alleys and streets of El Jem, I was pretty darn sure that there was something wrong with my GPS yet again. But convinced as I was that things were wrong once more, I was the one at fault. Behold, right at the end of the alley, the third largest Colosseum in the world, and mind you, the best preserved one, the Colosseum of El Jem. Regardless of where you've been in this world, where you've traveled to, and what you've seen so far, the sheer size of this building will make you pause in absolute awe. And I couldn't help but admiring the ingenuity of the Roman engineers who put this building together, and conveniently so, right next to a beautiful coffee shop in the shade that I was gonna make a break pretty soon. But first, I had to go all the way around and admire this magnificent UNESCO World Heritage Site. Having been baking in the sun the entire day and driving into Bob, a shade at that time was worth more than gold. And sure enough, that beautiful, cute little coffee shop was eagerly waiting for me and Bob to park there, catch our breath, and enjoy a cup of coffee and a smoke. For all of you who have been following both my travels and my channel, you will know by now that I'm absolutely obsessed with coffee. No matter where I go, what I do, even if things go well or things go bad, coffee always makes things just a wee bit better. With my tummy full and plenty of caffeine flowing through my veins, it was time for me to go and explore that magnificent building. Mind you, it can hold 35,000 spectators cheering, clapping, applauding, and screaming their guts out at people butchering and slaughtering themselves up in the arena below. The amphitheater itself is so impressive and so original that yes, a movie was involved in taking place here, and that was none other than The Gladiator. The beauty of the building lies in the fact not just that the architecture is awesome, but you are free to roam around in any direction you want and enjoy yourself as much as you can by taking in the surroundings. Believe it or not, my trip almost came to an end at this very point. Why? Because I was plain stupid. And this is but a spine of a guy that has been driving a classic Mini, a 50-year-old classic Mini, in a very uncomfortable seat for 5,000 continuous kilometers. Looks like. It's not a pretty sight, and trust me, it was extremely painful. This, of course, didn't happen overnight. It was the cumulative sum, or the cumulative torture, of my spinal cord in Bob, driving for more or less a month and a half, almost non-stop, almost every single day, in terrain that this car was never meant to be driven in. And all it took was one wrong move, me bending over in the boot to put some tools and parts back into place, right before I was about to have coffee in El Jem. And that was it. I was done for. In all the months I've been planning the trip and preparing Bob and trying to work through every single possible detail of things that could or possibly go wrong, I eventually ignored one major factor. And that had nothing to do with Bob. Bob survived the trip just fine. The weakest link was me. Of course, my biggest concern was that I was actually 1,860 something kilometers from home, salvation, relaxation, doctors, medicine, all that kind of stuff that was flying through my head, and I somehow had to get there. There was one problem though. I could not drive at all. During the next consecutive 4 days that I was lying in bed, pretty much incapable of doing anything but doing just that, lying in bed, all I did was taking stock of everything I've seen, everywhere I've been, throughout my 3 week stay in Tunisia. And it took just that, a broken back and plenty of time on my hands, lying on a bed, to realize how much I've done and how much I had seen in just 3 weeks in a magnificent country in North Africa. To my utter surprise, despite the acute pain that I was experiencing for the first 2 days, lying in bed at my host house in Monastir, doctors in Tunisia really took very good care of me, and after 12 injection shots, 30 pills, and plenty of rest, I was back on the road again. Hurt, but on the road again. So, I'll be seeing everyone pretty soon in my attempt to climb the Stelvio Pass. Yes, the Stelvio Pass in Italy with a broken back. How crazy am I? Till then, take care of your fantastic selves, motor on, and I'll be seeing you very, very soon.